In 1995, Pulstar hit the scene and dramatically changed the landscape of Neo Geo shooters. In essence, it's kind of like a remake of R-Type. Long story short, but many of the folks who made R-Type actually made this game. Whenever I hear people talk about R-Type, I typically hear them say things such as, "Oh my god, the difficulty," or "How in the hell am I supposed to pass this area without dying?" Those are very, very true statements. But when you're talking about Pulstar, you might want to add a few F-bombs into the mix just to keep things spicy. The truth is, Pulstar is a very challenging game. It was designed to be played repeatedly so that you memorize every square inch of the screen to know precisely which enemies will come into the playfield and when. This isn't the type of shooter where you run to collect a bunch of bonuses. This is the type of shooter where your primary mission is to survive. Once you can survive, then you can start worrying about high scores and whatnot. Much like Blazing Star, which was released several years after Pulstar, this game was nearly impossible to acquire back in the day. It was only made available on the Japanese AES and the Neo Geo CD. This made it extremely sought after. Today you can download it for $10 on a wide assortment of systems as part of Hamster's ACA Archives collection, which is exactly what you're seeing here today. This allows an entirely new generation of gamers to experience this classic shooter. And by the way, going the MVS route isn't really that much more affordable these days. At the beginning of the review I mentioned that Pulstar was a lot like R-Type, and that's very true. You have a power pod that you can use to absorb shots, you get access to tiny turrets of sorts that can be positioned around your ship to help keep you alive, but much like Blazing Star, you don't have access to screen-clearing bombs. Pulstar is what I refer to as an environmental shooter. That means your ship isn't super fast, the sprite is very large, and the stages close in on you. Like I said, you're meant to play each stage over and over again until you know it inside out. Personally, I've never been a huge fan of this particular style of shooter, as I prefer slightly faster paced shooters or bullet hell shooters where you're looking for patterns in swarms of bullets. Now, don't get me wrong, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this style of shooter, but take note on which type you prefer. It's very easy to get frustrated here if you're not a fan of this style. That being said, this is a classic shooter for a reason. It's extremely fun to play and to try and memorize everything going on. Be warned that if you do die, you lose all of your power-ups, and depending on where you are in the stage, that likely means game over. Speaking of dying, when you do die, you're sent back to a previous checkpoint, and that, coupled with the fact that you lose your power-ups, is mainly why the game is so incredibly challenging. You'll see in the footage that just staying alive is very, very difficult. The first two stages act as a tease of sorts, because the next few are going to absolutely wreck your face. I know this review is coming off like many that have been done on Pulstar before, where I primarily focus on the challenge, but I do want to talk about something else. It's a beautiful audio-visual presentation. I find this game holds up absolutely perfectly today, and the gameplay also remains rock solid. Yeah, there is some slowdown here and there, but I honestly find it helps me make it out of the stages alive. I really find Pulstar to be a work of art, and I mean, just look at the attention to detail here, it's breathtaking. The Arcade Archives version of the game features all the things you've come to expect, so you can make it a little bit easier and boost the lives and so on, but be warned, even if you do that, this is not going to be a cakewalk. It will take patience and tons of practice just to complete the few levels included. So, best of luck, shooter fans!